and spend some quality time with your family.
Okay, Batman, we'll take it from here. All right, listen up. All of you have the right to remain silent.
The LEGO Batman persona surrounds his blatant narcissism, a trait that has only been mildly explored in previous iterations, but stems from his quite apparent loner lifestyle. Growing up not having those parental figures of his mother and father, as well as the mental scarring that prevents him from developing further relationships, this is all filtered into his heightened idea of self-identity. A coping mechanism to try to mentally justify to himself why being alone is a better option. Maybe as a way to find some twisted explanation as to why these traumas have specifically happened to him. Maybe it's a way to prove to himself that he doesn't need outside interference to handle his own issues, philosophy that he even carries when it comes to governing his city of Gotham. All that is known is that Batman isn't the alter ego in his life, but rather it's Bruce Wayne, a Bruce Wayne that is still mentally stuck in that alley with his parents all these years later. What's left is a brooding, self-centered Batman that Wayne finds himself drawn towards, while outwardly it may be due to his ability to serve justice and fight crime with all these cool gadgets. Subconsciously, he's attracted to the sense of community that comes with the role, constantly being praised and glorified, constantly being needed by someone. The persona of Batman simultaneously fills in the gaps of his lack of social interactions, yet also fuels his ego as well, an ego that he can always fall back on in defense whenever he gets too close to someone. The scene in question takes place right after the Joker turns himself and all the other villains into the new commissioner of Barbara Gordon, an action that effectively drops crime to 0% as everyone evil is behind bars, something that a crime fighter who risks their lives every day in order to strive for this would be a fan of, but Batman's look does not reflect that. We don't see a look of excitement or of rejuvenated spirits, but that of sorrow for what the lack of crime fighting will force Bruce Wayne to face, his own fears and his own vulnerabilities. Slowly we see this background become grayed and distorted, singling out his now bleak reality without his escape to rely on, which is quite an interesting implement of this color trope, considering that the background that it's trying to distort is that of celebration, gleeful expressions all around that Batman conceptualizes as a dreadful memory, really highlighting just how distorted his sense of belonging is. We quite literally view a graph marking the correlation between his decreasing happiness in the hours without crime. Physically and metaphorically, he walks through life with a melancholy look, with his internal conflicts manifesting themselves in such emotionally charged actions, to the point that it's affecting the very few people that actually do care about his well-being. Whether that be his rampant outbursts towards his butler and father figure Alfred, the lack of care towards his essential habits such as eating and sleeping, or even the unhealthy obsession with the villains that are actively being held in containment, to the point that his obsession later on actively causes the Joker's plan to come into fruition. This man is purely a being of emotion, which makes up the idea of LEGO Bruce Wayne. A LEGO Bruce Wayne that feeds into this idea of LEGO Batman as a method of escape, and the driving force that justifies the existence for LEGO Batman is the existence of evildoers. And so when one of those things is undone, it all unravels on Bruce at once until he's just the ball of emotions that is his core. The very icing on the cake when it comes to this scene is the presence of the semi-popular loner song of One by Harry Nilsson in the background, which seemingly creeps in to bolster that somber feeling. While being slightly overused, the song itself surrounds the feeling of a recently reminiscing man, handling this experience of being alone for the first time in a long time. This is more of an ambiguous type of feeling, with it being more of that loneliness associated with losing something you held dearly and can't have back. Reflecting upon the unfamiliar situation he is in, while noting that his thoughts can only relate to his times of the past. It's clear to see those parallels the song has to our protagonist of the LEGO Batman himself, a man that has recently broken up with his city as his role as a vigilante has become futile, leading him to finally face a void he has temporarily been filling in and obsessing over what used to be. Beyond the lyrics, however, what's most notable is the creeping feeling of a slight uneasiness that accompanies the song along with the sorrowness, having that constant which is supposed to mimic the sound of when one calls into a busy signal, just having that tension of a repeating chord, having us questioning what it's all building up to, something that you would more likely expect from a horror movie, showing us that true distress of Bruce no longer being able to play mental gymnastics to shy away from his feelings. What's most fascinating about this scene in particular is really more how it ends, being a metaphor for how the LEGO Batman story will play out. Being caught up in his obsession, watching over the locked up villains that fueled his mental escape, he was brought back to reality through the shock of his connection to Barbara Gordon, the actual family he so desperately dreads obtaining, in fear of eventually losing it all over again, breaking through his defensive walls and his ego to show that there are better ways to operate than just taking everything in for himself. He comes back to his senses screaming Barbara, which is comically similar to the dramatization of the pronunciation of Martha in Batman v Superman, but we also see the gray clouds of obscurity wither away. The LEGO franchise is such an anomaly in film, and surprisingly one of the greatest examples of the legitimacy that non-live action mediums can have in regards to story building, because not only are they leagues above many other franchises when it comes to making nuanced characters and detailing their development, but they achieve levels of thematic balance that studios have a hard time recreating multiple times over, and they do it at a good to elite level for 4 movies straight. Having excellent comedic timing that can catch anyone off guard, then switching immediately into a heart-wrenching moment that makes you question why you have built such an emotional bond to a talking Lego. Its outlandishness allows for it to really tackle certain aspects of a character's identity without having to hyperfixate on staying true to every little detail. It just all comes together in this movie to form the greatest scene in Batman history.